What's going on, everybody? Welcome in Wager Alarm live stream. I'm your host, Howard Bender. With me here, Craig Mish. Lots to talk about. NFL Week 1 in the books. College football Week 2 in the books. It's time to start looking ahead at some of what we're got going on this week. But before we do that, Craig, how are you, man? Great to see you. We had a really nice weekend here. Why don't we recap everything that we did this past weekend between the Super Contest and our college picks and see where we're at.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good start for the season. We started off the first week by giving away one college football game. It was Oregon minus 31, and they ended up winning. Those lines in the first week, I tend to kind of take a step back in the first week of college football because you really don't know with so many big lines. And we have some, as a matter of fact, this week too, which we'll get to. So we started off 1-0, not bad. We gave out 3 picks on Friday night with our live stream. We'll give out 3 college football picks every week here on the stream. And we gave out South Carolina. Let's talk about that. South Carolina got annihilated by Georgia. It was not close. It wasn't close for like 10 seconds of that game. and look, you just gotta call it what it is. Maybe just getting those 10 points was a trap at home. Either way, Georgia looks like they are right back where they were last year, and meanwhile, they lost so many players due to the NFL, and they still look like a juggernaut. Remember, they got to that championship game last year, and if not for Alabama's quarterback, Georgia may be the national champion. The second pick we had was Stanford. Stanford was a winner, relatively easy, no issues at all. They led from start to finish in this one. I think they led 7-0, then they led 14-0. And then I stopped watching. It didn't even matter anymore at that point. I thought I was going to win. Stanford minus 6.5. That was a pretty easy win. And then the third game was Arizona State against Michigan State. And we said on the air that Arizona State could win this game outright. A very tough spot for Michigan State, traveling cross country, going on the road. And the head coach for Michigan State has not been good against the spread on the road, especially in tough places. Arizona State, with that defense, Howard, and just manufacturing the offense the way they did, they pulled out the outright win. So they did win that. And again, for me to sit here and say that I would expect every team getting 7 or 10 to win outright wouldn't be the case, but it did smell a little bit funny. So 2-1 there and 3-1 overall in college football to start. So if you're winning 3 out of 4 every time you do this, you're gonna be doing fine. You have no complaints with that. We're not going to be hitting 3 out of 4 all year. I can tell you that. In the Super Contest, it's week 1. So we had our 5 picks against the spread. And boy, we were feeling really good after the 1 o'clock Eastern games. We had the Bengals, who looked like they were left for dead, and they came all the way back to beat Indianapolis. We had the Ravens. That game was over from the very beginning. The Ravens were the most picked game in the Super Contest last week. And it's rare to see or maybe Cincinnati was number 1. Either way, Baltimore and Cincinnati were both among the top, and they both came in. So we had the Bengals, we had the Ravens. No, that was easy. It took some stones to take Tampa Bay plus 9.5, but we were in agreement on that one too. That was a weird line. The Saints are at home against one of the worst teams in the NFL. That line should have been 12 or 13. The fact that it was not gave a little bit of an indicator, and those teams have played against each other pretty well. Did I expect the Tampa to put up a 50 spot on the Saints? No. Do I expect the Saints to get much better and start rolling? Yes. But it's a 1-week league, man. Like when they say they give that cliche, it's we're just going to take it week by week. It literally is. The NFL is a week by week. You can't predict things from week to week. So we started off 3-0. That was awesome. And then the late games, let's be honest, the Chargers really never had a shot against Kansas City. I really just didn't know what Pat Mahomes is going to be. Now that we know that he looks okay, he'd be a tough guy to fade right now. I'm not really sure what he'll be the rest of the season. And also, truth be told, we never had a shot, but the LA Chargers, I'll never get that right. Howard, they did drop a number of passes for Rivers, which kind of took them out of their game plan. Wide open pass. I saw one in the end zone and then another one. I don't know what Rivers got to be thinking today. And then the final one was the Broncos. That line was 2.5 during the week. The Super Contest line was 3. We said that if you're going to bet Denver, you got to do it now. And that turned out to be the case. That's the difference, Howard, in betting. You get 100 games. If you're going to bet on 100, you're going to win 50 and I'm going to win 50. The difference between how many I'm going to win or you're going to win is going to come down to a half a point or a point. And that's a perfect example right there where you could have had a win if you took the advice on the minus 2.5, but you got a push because they ended up winning by 3. I'll say this about that final game. So we went 3-1-1 in the Super Contest, and then we'll start analyzing all of this. I have a big takeaway from that Broncos Seahawks game. My first takeaway is Seattle's going to be bad. We talked about that at the beginning of the season. They're going to go under that total, and that's going to be the easiest win of the year. The other one is Denver's not very good either. Denver is not very good either, and they almost gave that game away a couple of times. Maybe this running back that they have will change a little bit of the dynamic. Lindsey, I wasn't really familiar with him going into the season, but my takeaway from that is that Denver was lucky to win that game. But I will say this, Seattle's not good. They just lost their receiver. They're going into a tough spot on Monday night. That could be a game we end up using on Monday night.
I have to, I disagree a little bit with the Denver call here. I do think they're going to be better. They're definitely. I think they're going to be a better team. I can't get behind Philip Lindsay, 5'8" little scat back who had a nice showing. He had an okay preseason, but we spent so much time talking about Devontae Booker or Royce Freeman, we didn't really factor him in.
I didn't at all.
Vance Joseph said he was going to play the hot hand, so we were just kind of looking at the other two. The thing about this first week in the NFL, and we've talked about this before, there was no week 3 of the preseason tune-up game for anybody. Like, nobody played all their starters in that game. Nobody got the inside look as to what any of these teams were going to look like. You saw so many different mistakes, like easy mistakes that you don't normally see a lot of teams make. There were a lot of fumbles, and I'm not even talking about the bad weather games. Look at AJ Green. AJ Green fumbled twice in that game.
Yeah,
is he a guy who fumbles regularly? No, he's not. So I'm glad. Listen, 3-1-1 in the Super Contest.
It's fantastic. No, it's a great start.
One is such a nightmare because not only do we not know a lot of what we've seen from the year before because of systems changing, coaches changing, personnel changing, but then on top of that, we didn't see any kind of a tune-up, and these guys didn't get the preseason work that they needed to. So I do think Denver gets better moving forward. Okay. I thought Keenum and Emmanuel Sanders had a really nice rapport going there.
Yeah, I'm a little worried. I thought Keenum didn't look as good as I thought he was going to look. Interceptions are a little bit unpredictable there. He threw a couple of them, made some mistakes. Maybe as the season goes on, you're right, and things will get better for them. I don't have that faith in Seattle at all. But look, could Denver be 8-8? Yeah, sure, they could. I just that was like my favorite game of the week, to be honest. I thought that they were going to roll Seattle, and initially that looked like that was going to happen, and then they just put Seattle back in the game several times. I don't think Seattle deserved to be in that game at all, but Lockett was wide open for that bomb. I don't know what the coverage was on that play, and then as the game goes on, as a bettor, you kind of say to yourself, okay, we got out of that one with a win, but I gotta temper a little bit my enthusiasm for Denver.
Sure.
But I am against Seattle, though. I am definitely against Seattle. I am good with that.
Listen, as a Jets fan, was I ridiculously ecstatic about last night's action? Yes. Am I saying that the Jets are going to go 16-0 and score 784 points on the season? No, absolutely not. Week 1, Patrick Mahomes and Sam Darnold combined for 1 interception. Ben Roethlisberger, Matthew Stafford, 9 between the two of them. So, yep. I mean, I'm glad we're out of it. And I'm definitely looking forward to.
We're at the top. I mean, there's some 5-0 teams. There's some 4-0-1s. There's some 4-1s. But when you're 3-1-1 out of thousands of people, you're at the top. I mean, that's where we're at after week 1. So we're not winning. We're not in 5th, 8th, or 10th. But to be in the conversation to start the season's great. I mean, even 3-2 at the beginning of the season. Remember, you're 3-2. You're getting 60%. At the end of the season, Howard, the winner will not be 60%. Think about that. At the end of the year, after all of this, no one will be 60. It'll be just under that. So if you're going 3 out of 5 every week, you're doing a good job.
All right, so that's the wrap from last week. We'll keep updating you guys as we go. Let's look ahead towards some college football games that we're picking right now. Before we do that, let me just say, remember, guys, who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with. That's why we've partnered with MyBookie.ag. They are your best bet this season. They've been in business for years. They've got great reviews online, and their mobile site, crazy easy to use. Visit fantasyalarm.com/mybookie, MYBOOKIE. Use the promo code ALARM, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Again, fantasyalarm.com/mybookie, promo code ALARM. You play, you win, you get paid. That's all we want, just to get paid. So let's talk about some college football right now here, Craig. Lots going on. Now, we dealt with this with week 1 of the NFL.
Yeah,
with the
here
weather,
we are.
and now here we are dealing with a hurricane. Talk to me, man. Where are you looking this week?
So look, a lot is going to change, and it's changed all day long. But West Virginia and NC State is out, so that game has been postponed. East Carolina against Virginia Tech has been postponed. Central Florida plays this week in the region. They're postponed as well. Wake Forest is at home. I think they may still be on at this point. I'm not sure where the Baylor-Duke game stands. So we're eliminating probably, Howard, by the time Saturday comes, 7 or 8 games. That's the Southeast region, which is where I live. I live in Florida. You're talking about up and down South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, the hotbed for the ACC and some Southeastern Conference football. So we have to, wait on those or see what happens. But look, there's no advantage right now to trying to predict what's going to happen by taking one of those teams with a bigger spread or a lesser spread. This morning, when I was looking at it, what was happening was all of the lines were moving against all of those regional teams because the public is thinking, okay, well, if they play those games, they may have to be relocated somewhere else, so they shouldn't be a favorite, and they should be a bigger underdog. And that's what was happening. It was all shifting. And then, of course, a lot of the games got canceled. So the two big games, so to speak, this week. And, Friday is when we'll give the final picks here, but we could kind of review them. Ohio State is going to be at TCU. Ohio State, obviously, everybody knows what happened with Urban Meyer at the beginning of the season. It looks like that team is somewhat rallying around the fact that he hasn't been there. They're minus 12.5 at TCU. The line right now is pretty steady. I don't think it's going either way. But I would have to say that by the time kickoff comes, in all likelihood, the Buckeyes will be 13 or 13.5 point favorites at TCU. The SEC game and the big game of the week will be LSU at Auburn. Auburn is minus 9.5. And what this line is telling you right now, for the most part, is that there just isn't a lot of faith in LSU. Even though LSU on opening night for them ended up beating Miami and really smacking them down pretty good in front of a national televised audience, there isn't a lot of faith here in them. So the line does say that Auburn is supposed to win this game and win it pretty handily. So this will be a game that I'll check out as the week goes by. And there's another interesting game in the SEC this week. Mississippi, is taking on Alabama. Alabama is a big favorite on the road at Mississippi, but Howard, the total in this game is the highest total I've ever seen for an Alabama game. I think it's 70 or it's in the 70s. And remember, the Crimson Tide not only are great on offense, they've been known under Nick Saban for their great defensive teams. So I think Alabama has a chance to throw a 50 spot on Mississippi, and then the question will be, can Mississippi score 20 points? They scored 70 points last week on their own. So this is going to be the highest point total on the board in college football, but I got to tell you, it may be too low. We may have a total in college coming this week. So that's kind of the way that I see college so far. And again, we have another, a lot of big lines this week. Penn State is minus 34. Maryland is minus 16. Wisconsin's minus 21. We just still haven't got into that part of the season where it's conference play and the lines are less. It just feels like there's even more this year. Georgia's minus 32 against Middle Tennessee State. These are not games that have a lot of value, Howard, when you're betting them. Every once in a while, I'll throw one out there like I did Oregon week 1, but in general, these lines, they don't go down, they go up. People start betting the favorite, and then as people throughout the day on Saturday lose, it's very easy to just pivot and just take the big favorite that night, and that's kind of what happens. So as the week goes on, we'll address it more. Alabama, by the way, minus 21 at Mississippi, and it looks like 72 is the total in that. That's that in an NFL game, 72. Wow.
Unreal. All right, so we're tracking the lines: Ohio State at TCU, LSU at Auburn, and then watching this Mississippi-Alabama situation here.
And as we get closer, I'll dive in more to these. It's just this week is tough. We got a lot of canceled games, because of the hurricane, and diving too deep into games that aren't going to be played is not always the wisest thing. So usually what I do is I start my research when the lines first come out on Sunday night, and then Monday I'll take a break on Tuesday or Wednesday. This week may be a little bit more of a wait and see situation, because even Clemson's game may be at risk too. There's just a lot of at-risk games this week because of the hurricane. Look, I was in South Florida last year when game one of the NFL season. So I was watching all the games from Disney World in my hotel. Me and my family, we were stuck up there for 6 days during the hurricane when it hit in South Florida. So you can imagine what these people are going through. It's a secondary thing to football for sure, but it affecting more college than pro, it looks like this year.
All right. Well, speaking of pro, let's flip over there. But before we do, as far as pro ball goes, hey guys, you guys want to play some DFS? Daily Fantasy Sports here. Obviously, we're talking betting and wagering on Wager Alarm here. But if you want to play DFS, but you don't want to lose money to the sharks or the computer algorithms, go to fantasyalarm.com/factor. Fantasy Factor is a DFS site with exclusive single entry contests, giving you a much better chance at winning. Fantasy Factor even has a quick pick option so everyone can play. Become a Factor today. Right now, get $5 free money immediately with any deposit. Go to fantasyalarm.com/factor. It's fantasyalarm.com/factor. Now, let's get to the meat. We already had the potatoes. Like I consider college potatoes. Like I want to talk NFL right now.
My favorite's a college. My favorite.
Like to each his own. Like it's kind of funny. Like I grew up in New York, and it wasn't like I never got bit by the college football bug. And then I went to a Div 3 school, so I never.
I went to University of Florida in Gainesville. They lost last week. It was a crusher. They lost to Kentucky. It was embarrassing. But I even grew up here in South Florida, where the University of Miami was. That's when the University of Miami was before their second run. The University of Miami had two really big runs. One where the head coach was from Howard Schnellenberger to Erickson to Jimmy Johnson, and then the next one was after a period of time where they were had some sanctions. It was the end of Butch Davis to Larry Coker. And so I experienced both of those as a kid, younger, and then as an adult covering those, in addition to the University of Florida. So college football has always been the thing. And Howard, honestly, if it wasn't for fantasy and gambling, and this has nothing to do with politics at all, I could go either way. I never talk politics on any of my shows because I don't feel like alienating half the country one way or the other, and it has nothing to do with it. But if there wasn't fantasy and there wasn't gambling, I would not spend 7 hours watching football on Sunday. And it's not because I don't love football. It's just because it's rare for me over the last few years to find games that are really good. It's just true. Like for fantasy, I get it. This is what we do, and it's part of your job, and it's part of mine, and it's part of ours here at Fantasy Alarm, trying to help you win in fantasy, trying to help you win in gambling. But just from a fan's perspective, the mystique of the Monday Night Football game was always the best game of the week, and then they brought in Sunday night. That used to be always an amazing game too. Don't get me wrong, this week was great. We had a nice opening week to start with, but when I look at the schedule and I see 6 or 7 games, and I'm like, oh man, the only reason I'm watching this, I mean, why would you watch the Chargers and Bills if it wasn't for fantasy or gambling? Why would you watch the Steelers and Browns? Why would you watch the Rams and Cardinals? And I could keep going. There's 5.
Dude, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is like they're piling on. Yeah, you know what? If it was great when it was Green Bay against Detroit, and you left it at, or Chicago against Detroit, and you left it at that. But now it's like 3 games, and 2 of the games are always crap. Always crap.
And monetarily, for me, it's made my life better with all of these NFL games because of gambling and because of fantasy. But I miss some of that mystique, and it's not about the Sunday ticket because I would have my friends over, and it's just the games themselves. Searching for that New England Minnesota game, like that one, like I shouldn't have to go 15 games in to find that one game. And we're very lucky because this week was good, but it really got great with the Sunday night finish with the Bears and the Packers. I mean, that really put the stamp on the week, and we had a good first week in the NFL. But truth be told, if it wasn't for these 2 things, now that I'm married and I have kids, I mean, I would just be out of it. But I ain't gonna lie, just like everybody else, from Saturday morning to Saturday night, and from Sunday late afternoon to Sunday night, I'm parked right in front of that TV watching all of my fantasy teams lose. It was great. Okay, so the NFL.
Well, we gotta get you more. You gotta start studying up on all the content at Fantasy Alarm.
I gotta start in June. That's my big mistake.
Yeah, that's the problem right there. Is that you're not drafting in June like the normal people.
Right.
Let's talk NFL games here. Let's talk wagering.
Okay.
We commented. You commented to me that the Jets started off. The Jets game was a pick'em game.
It was a pick'em, yeah.
Again, they're at home hosting Miami. Mm-hmm. Then it went up. They're favored by 1.5. I'm looking at the line right now. They're -3.
It went up to 3 now.
It went up to 3.
Just check that, just to be sure.
In the time that we talked, it went up to 3.
Okay, you're right. Okay, so yeah, earlier today it was a first a pick'em, then it was 1.5. Now it's a 3. Okay, so look, I don't know if this will be a game that we'll use or not. You and I will discuss this before the weekend. Very clearly,
I don't want to use it.
This is a big overreaction to the way that the Jets looked. I don't know, Howard, if the Dolphins are good or bad, but here's what I know. That was, of all the games, I don't know if Mpemba agrees, of all of the games played Sunday, the least indicative game of how a team was that Dolphins-Titans game.
Oh, yeah.
They played 2 games, I'm throwing all of that out. It was Gabbert. It was hurt guys on Tennessee. Dolphins ran a kickback for it. I just don't know. And early on in the week, I may change my mind, and maybe we'll try to convince each other on this. But my early lean is just I'm just going to ignore this game. The Rams are the biggest favorite of the week, which should come as no surprise. Wow, this moved up a lot, too. The Rams this morning were -10, and they are now -12.5. Yeah. Against Arizona. So what is the takeaway here? Boy, if you're thinking about betting Arizona, you're probably crazy. And and I don't even know if the Rams would necessarily be the play, but I don't think I can make a case early in the week, Howard, or late for taking Arizona here. I mean, maybe Arizona just surprises and we get this one wrong, but I don't ever love laying this many points in the NFL, but what they're telling you here is it is going to be a blowout. I think that for a survivor type pick, it does seem a little obvious, and the Rams did look great, right? I didn't watch the game as closely probably as you, but it does seem to me that this line is correct, and the Rams should be this big of a favorite.
Oh, I think the line is definitely correct. We were talking about the fact that they were only a 5.5 point favorite over the Raiders in last night's game. And whether or not that was concerning us, like the Tampa-New Orleans game, and whether or not that was concerning us. And then, we saw Sean McVay come out last night's game, and all he was doing was throwing the ball, and he wasn't running girly roughshod over the Oakland Raiders, and that kept it close. Then all of a sudden, boom, second half, he's like, all right, I just got to keep feeding Gurley, and boom, it completely blew up.
It's a good team, a lot of talent on defense, too. Arizona, my guess is they do a similar thing to Buffalo. I'm gonna guess that they start Bradford. Have they announced that they're not starting Bradford yet? It's early in the week.
No, I think they're still
okay. So they'll probably start him, Howard, and then if it's 21-0, I think at that point they'll probably go to Josh Rosen. That's not going to be a good thing, when a rookie quarterback is the backup going into the week. It's just. But again, not something I love right now. In fact, I'll have a couple of leans that I'll give you. All right, so a couple totals also that have moved. KC Pittsburgh opened at 50. It's now 53. Look, that's the Mahomes factor right there. There's no doubt. When the quarterback looks that good in the game, the line is going to get pushed up. And the Chiefs did not look as good defensively as they have in the past, too. And I think that there is some factor with Pittsburgh looked pretty good. They just made some mistakes. And if Roethlisberger is going to make some mistakes, it's actually good for the total in this one because ball's going the other way. So that's 53. Also, Cleveland, New Orleans, it should not be a surprise to anyone. The Saints defense looked awful. So their line in the total goes from 47.5 to 50. But I think that as a bettor, the key thing to remember is every week there are going to be huge overreactions to what you see. And the other thing that factors in greatly is, for example, why are we not railing against Buffalo like we are Detroit? And it's a pretty easy answer, and it does affect the line. And the reason why is because on Sunday, people watch the games, of course, but now in this day and age of having the options to watch them all, and Mpemba does it in funny ways, but having the option to watch them all is that you wouldn't choose to watch that game, Buffalo against the Ravens. You had no choice. last night. You had no choice. Everybody saw how bad the Lions looked. And I would probably tell you that is going to be the single biggest overrating of a team so far this year. People are, they're done. They're terrible. They're horrible. Listen, the Lions may not win 8 games. They may not win 7 games. They are not as bad as they looked last night. And the opening line should tell you that when they're playing at San Francisco, it line opened at 3. It got pushed. It's 5.5 now.
Right.
But this keeps going up and up. I am definitely going to take Detroit. Look, San Francisco's okay. Don't get me wrong. They're a good team. Their Vegas total, I think, is 8.5 or 9. So they're not supposed to be fantastic. They're just supposed to be good. Detroit will get up for this game on Sunday. My guess is this game will be a 3 to 7 point game going into the fourth quarter. Hey, if Stafford throws a pick 6 in the fourth, that's fine. But when you're betting these things, you always want to just be in the game in the fourth until the wacky stuff starts happening, because it happens in all the games. But early on, and again, by the time Friday comes, we'll see. But 63% of the public money right now, and that's a high number, is on San Francisco, and that's a reaction from what they saw last night. If this line goes to 7, I am definitely taking Detroit. I mean, that would be major overreaction there.
All right, let me ask you a question, because there's one game that I'm looking at the line, and I'm wondering why it is like that, and that's Washington against the Colts. Andrew Luck, I mean, he didn't look like vintage Andrew Luck, but he looked good enough, and he did a decent job against the Bengals, and they stayed in that game. They had the lead, and they coughed up the lead defensively. Washington, okay, so they beat up on Arizona. We've already kind of established that Arizona's got their problems. It's a 5.5 spread with a 45.5 total right now. And I'm kind of wondering why, money didn't look that good.
No, and you're right. Money is going to come in on Indianapolis. That's not going to go any higher than that. 77% of the money right now is on the Redskins. So, I would not have thought this line. In fact, I think this more, what's funny is I looked this morning, I looked this afternoon, these have moved quite a bit. I think that, this is the kind of online game where if you have the opportunity and you like Indianapolis right now, you buy your half a point, you take +6 and you go about your business. Because I think that by the time Sunday comes around, I don't think Washington is going to move up a lot. And look, the Colts, you're right. I watched that game very closely because we had stock in the Bengals on Sunday, and they didn't look that bad. Reich has to kind of figure out, I think, what he wants to do with those running backs. He didn't have Marlon Mack, so he started using Wilkins, and then I think I saw Christian Michael in the game at one point. He may have used him as well. You had to factor in that Indianapolis was gonna have a little bit of struggles in that first game with Luck. That's what we talked about, and then you have to put the blinders on, and you have to forget about that game like it didn't even happen. And then analyze it from another perspective, and you're right. I mean, Washington doesn't really deserve to be 6-point favorites over anyone, so I think that's a good call early on.
Nice,
but we'll see. But
of course, listen, this is just preliminary. Let's look at the lines. Let's watch how they move. Let's figure it out. I don't want to make any decisions. Although, come on, Chicago, 3.5-point favorites over the Seahawks on Monday night. According to you, the Seahawks are trash.
Yeah, I think we'll probably end up taking Chicago in the game. There's no line on Houston, Tennessee, so we'll have to wait on that. I guess they're waiting to see if Mariota is going to start. 2 teams that I will say that you can overreact to, at least in my opinion, with legitimate concern. Seattle, who we've talked about, we don't have to talk about them anymore. I think the Bears will be better. The line is 3 right now. By Friday, we'll make the final call on that. Buffalo, that's not the team that all of a sudden is going to pop up and beat the Chargers Sunday. That's not going to happen.
Oh, did I say the Chargers last week? I meant the Chargers this week.
Yeah, and I don't like laying 7 on the road ever, and this line was 7.5. It's now 7, which means the money is coming in on Buffalo. But I don't know, man. Like, that looked like, wow. Like, I mean, the Raiders showed some promise. Detroit still has Stafford there. But Buffalo, both offensively and not just offensively, but defensively, they look terrible. Yeah, like that to me was the bigger surprise, because I thought, all right, what's going to happen in this game? Buffalo, they'll get killed, but they'll get killed 27-10. But it was like 27-0 at the half, and And it's not like I see that. Like I see Detroit picking themselves up off the floor at ground zero and going, yeah, like we'll get it done. Like we'll fight for our guys this week. But I don't see Buffalo being good at all. I could see Buffalo losing like the first 10 or 11 games of the season.
Oh, people are just going to keep survivor pools, just keep picking against.
But they look awful. Yeah, the offensive line, Peterman at quarterback. Have they announced that yet? Who started? Or
they have not announced that yet. I think they're just waiting until the day after the game is over to tell you who their quarterback was. There's not going to be a number. There's not going to be a name on the back of the jersey. And there's going to be a paper bag over the dude's head.
Doug Johnson, one of those two guys. Remember they used to put those two guys in and out? On the rise, I would say the Rams definitely look the part of being one of the best teams in the NFL. Yep. So I wouldn't say I was skeptical going into last night's game, but look, the Rams have only been a good team for one season in the last 10, and it was this last year. So you never know. Sometimes when a team gets real good for 1 year, they fall back down. The Rams look legit, and the Buccaneers. Look, the Buccaneers are not winning 10 or 11 games, no. But that was a good performance, and maybe this is the rallying call for Fitzpatrick. I'm just not sure. I don't think the Saints are great by any means, but I don't think the Bucs are going to go 2-14, and I don't think they're going to get blown out in every game. They've shown enough there. You know, Evans to me is still an elite guy at wide receiver, almost uncoverable. I was very surprised as active as Deshaun Jackson was in that game. I guess he's questionable this week. It doesn't matter. They have Godwin too. He can play a little bit. Running will get a little bit better for them. I'm not buying the Bucs in terms of their win total on the season, but I am saying that I think they'll cover some spreads. This is probably not a week forward against Philadelphia, but either way, I think Tampa will be a betting team this year.
Nice. All right.
I'm throwing out Tennessee. I don't know anything about them. I don't know how anyone can have an opinion one way or the other on the Titans after watching.
No, I mean, listen, that whole game was just, 2-hour delays, no halftime, 7 hours it took to complete that game. 7.
Yeah. And then the best game of the week will be Green Bay and Minnesota. It's a huge game.
That's going to be a great one.
It'll be a fantastic game this week. And, we'll as we get closer, we'll dive in. But, yeah, early on, I kind of like that Colts idea. I wonder why. It bothers me a little bit that Washington's that big of a favorite. It's almost saying that, maybe the Colts aren't that good. In fact, it just went to 6 here. Let's get at 6 now.
What about New Orleans? 9-point favorites over the Browns.
I like New Orleans.
Yeah?
I like a bounce.
Just come back and just smack the crap out of them.
I think I like a bounce back there. That's one of those where everyone's going to go, oh, no, they're not so good. Cleveland look good. And they just win like 51-0. That's the kind of – you have to – you got to throw it out. You got to throw out what happened, the week before. And then there's – let me see how the public money is right now in that game. 75% on the Saints. Yeah, so it's gone up from 8 to 9. I don't think it's going to go any higher than that. There's so many people sour. There's so many sour people on New Orleans.
So many.
Just think of those people who took, like in a teaser, right? The Saints. That's 2-team teaser, so -6 for each team. So you took the Saints down to -3. They're gonna beat the Bucs by 3, and then you took the Ravens for free. -1. You're like, oh, the Ravens definitely gonna win by 1. That's a lock. The 2-team teaser. All they got to do is win. Yeah. Good luck.
Very depressing. So I told you, man, in the 2 survivor pools I had, 62% of the field gone in one because they took the Saints and they got the tie from Pittsburgh, and a tie in that survivor pool was a loss. And then 52% of the field in my other survivor pool all had the Saints. Guess what? I had no Saints. 0.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate.
Because of you.
Advocated that one.
All right.
Let me just real quick see if there's a big. Okay, so. Real quick, Giants, Dallas, the Cowboys are -3. You can't pay me to have an opinion on that one yet. Baltimore, Cincinnati's Thursday game, so we'll miss that. Where would I lean here? Cincinnati. I'd probably lean Cincinnati. They're at home, and they're not laying anything. Baltimore, how can you look at what they did last week and really think it was anything special?
No, I can't.
I thought Cincinnati looked all right. I thought they looked okay. You're right. Green fumbled twice. If he doesn't, they probably win the game, easier. And Mixon looked really good, right?
Mixon looked really good. The offensive line held its own. Andy Dalton's still under center though, and that's the big detractor.
They're going to find a way to lose, but they'll win their 9 games.
Yeah.
Atlanta.
What about Atlanta, Carolina? Like that's the one. Like I hate Steve Sarkisian. I think that he's a terrible offensive coordinator. I think he's screwing up the Falcons right now. But Carolina, coaching change, personnel change. Is there ever a game where Luke Kuechly doesn't go down with some sort of injury?
They suffered a lot of injuries, and the line says you take Atlanta here, even though I hate taking Atlanta. It says
hate it.
Because you know what? If you go back, and I can't guarantee this, but if you go back and you look at the last 2-3 years of Carolina, Atlanta, when Atlanta's at home, -3. When Carolina's at home, -3. Atlanta's -5.5 here. So, I mean, it doesn't scream to me to say take Carolina here. Philly -3 at Tampa. We talked about the Jets. The Chargers -7 at Buffalo. Pittsburgh at home -5 against Kansas City. Green Bay -1 point against Minnesota. That's a tough game. Washington -6 against Indianapolis. We talked about Detroit, San Francisco. That's 5.5. Arizona, the Rams are -12.5 against Arizona. Denver -5.5 against Oakland. I may go back to the Oakland well here. I may.
How about New England, Jacksonville? Look at that one. In Jacksonville, New England by 2 is what I'm looking at.
Well, they played while we were at the FSTA conference last year in January. I remember watching that game at the hotel bar. And Jacksonville took a big lead in that game, right? And then New England just came back in the second half and won.
Yeah.
Fournette is a factor here. Is he playing? What's the story with him?
He's hurt.
Yeah, if he's
Shocking.
out, I cannot take Jacksonville. And then the Bears, we'll probably end up taking the Bears Monday. Yeah, I think so. And that's it. In Houston, Tennessee, we got no line. So we'll check back Friday. We'll see how it goes. Go Bengals Thursday.
Go Bengals on Thursday. All right. That's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Craig Mish. Big thanks to John and Pemba, our producer. This has been the Wager Alarm live stream. We'll check you Friday night when we recap everything. We talk about which super contest games we're taking and which college picks we're making. So stay cashing, everybody. Boom.